Cuba is cracking down on recent unrest in the country and blaming it on the US. It's accused the US of economic asphyxiation over sanctions imposed during the Trump administration. US officials say the Cuban government should listen to its own people instead.
I think it would be a grievous mistake for the Cuban regime to interpret what is happening in dozens of towns and cities across the island as the result or product of anything the United States has done. It would be a grievous mistake because it would show that they simply are not hearing the voices and will of the Cuban people. People deeply, deeply, deeply tired of the repression that has gone on for far too long.
There are reports of internet blackouts in Cuba after the protests, and according to an exiled rights group, at least 100 protesters, activists and independent journalists have been detained. CNN's Patrick Oppman has more now from Havana.
The protests that swept across Cuba, the largest in decades, stunned the communist-run government and quickly turned violent. Demonstrators pelted patrol cars with stones, and police forcibly arrested scores of people. Repression, this woman told CNN. All that we have here is repression. Counter-protesters organized by the government tried to shout them down. Some chanting that they are Fidel Castro. But Fidel Castro died in 2016, and his brother Raul retired in April. Now the job of managing Cuba's worst crisis in a generation falls to their handpicked successor, Miguel Díaz-Canel, who called the protesters criminals.
Ayer apedraron a fuerzas de la policía.
They stoned the police force, damaged cars, he said, a behavior that's completely vulgar, completely indecent. Tensions have been building for months in Cuba over increased sanctions first imposed by the Trump administration. The pandemic has further wounded an already ailing economy. Cubans wait for hours in crowded lines each day to buy what little there is as the number of COVID-19 cases surge. Cuba's food crisis appears to be getting worse and worse as the pandemic goes on longer and longer. The people here say they don't want to be waiting hours in these lines, but they feel the choice they have is run the risk of getting infected or going hungry. The Biden administration warned the Cuban government not to crack down on the protesters.
We call on the government of Cuba to refrain from violence or attempts to silence the voice of the people of Cuba.
But after a day of angry clashes, that warning may have already fallen on deaf ears. Patrick Oppman, CNN Havana.
And Cuba isn't the only country where economic upheaval is linked to COVID. Over the last year, we have seen protests across the world over government handling of the pandemic. And out of the 5 countries with the highest death tolls, 3 spots belong to Latin America. Brazil is facing a new COVID wave, and protesters have demanded President Jair Bolsonaro be impeached or resign over his handling of the crisis. In Colombia, human rights groups have accused security forces of using excessive force against demonstrators protesting a proposed tax bill. Critics said it would hurt the middle class in a country already struggling with COVID. And in Venezuela, there were already shortages before the pandemic. Human Rights Watch warned back in March 2020 the country's health system was teetering on the brink of collapse. Well, for more on this, let's bring in Christopher Sabatini, a senior fellow at Chatham House in London. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Rosemary.
So why is it that these leaders across Latin America and the Caribbean have failed their people so miserably, the pandemic only highlighting how they've abandoned their responsibilities in terms of health services, medical supplies, food, water, and other basic necessities?
Rosemary, it's important to go back to 2019, at the end of 2019 in particular. There was already a wave of protests. You had protests in Chile and Ecuador, the Dominican Republic, Bolivia, though for different reasons, Venezuela, And those protests were because a rising middle class simply didn't feel that it had the quality social services that it deserved, the social mobility that it expected. And then, of course, everything was put on hold because of COVID. So what you had was basically a pressure cooker for the last year and a half, and now we're beginning to see that boil over. And what it's beginning to expose is a lot of the structural flaws in the system that those protests were already beginning to identify in 2019. As you mentioned, access to social services, state capacity, social safety nets. And a large part of this, as you asked, why, is because over 60% of many people in Latin America and places like Peru or Brazil are employed in the informal sector. That means they don't have access to insurance or unemployment insurance or health insurance. And so therefore, when these countries shut down, they couldn't simply go back to their homes. They lived on a day-to-day wage, basically. And so they had to eventually go back to work. So we're seeing not just the effects of a very weak healthcare system, but also a very weak social safety net system that forces people back to work. And consequently, we're seeing a region with only 8% of the world's population, more than 30% of the infection rates.
And this was the first major protest in Cuba in decades. The protesters marching for regime change as the government struggles to contain COVID there. They're hurting right now with food shortages, energy blackouts, restrictions on social media platforms. But what can they realistically achieve or expect? And how do you think the Cuban government will handle this with the world watching so closely now?
Well, it's a good question because for all the ills of the other countries and their democracies, and they are nominally democracies at least, there are elections. And so that provides a safety valve for people's demands. In Cuba, that doesn't exist. They haven't had a competitive election since 1959, since the revolution. So consequently, very much bread and butter issues, better health care, better jobs, better access to food, are simply challenges to the regime. And the regime is going to act like any government that's feeling threatened because it doesn't have the capacity to mediate those demands. And so it's cracking down. What's important, as it was mentioned by Patrick in the beginning story, is that the Castros haven't been around. This is the first protest post-Castro. And so the current president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, is demonstrating, and he said this, I'm going to respond in a revolutionary way. What that means is he's not a child of the revolution, but he's going to respond with the same repressive tactics and iron fist that the Castros did too. And he has to because he can't look weak. And we're already seeing that with over 100 protesters jailed.
Right. And in the wake of these unprecedented protests across Cuba, President Biden said the U.S. stands with the people of Cuba, but he hasn't done anything concrete to help them so far, even after promising to reverse Trump's Cuba policies during the 2020 election campaign. What should Biden be doing right now, and why do you think he hasn't acted on this yet?
Well, let me answer the last question first. He largely hasn't acted on lifting the embargo because he needs to get a series of appointments confirmed in the Senate. And in the Senate sit two very prominent Cuban Americans, Senator Marco Rubio from Florida and Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey. If he looks like he's going to tinker with the embargo over their heads, they're going to hold up all those nominations. So he has to put his cabinet in place. He has to put his ambassadors in place. Now, what can he do now? The problem is all the screws have been tightened as much as they can under the Trump embargo. So he really can't, he doesn't have any other leverage to do anything more. There's some people, including the mayor of Miami, who's arguing that the U.S. should intervene, which is ridiculous, especially given U.S.-Cuban history. What he has to do, and I think he's done this very artfully so far, is stand with the Cuban people, say he defends their rights to protest, and not do what the Trump administration did repeatedly, which is call the Cuban government names, basically engage in regime change rhetoric, but to talk about the need to recognize the legitimacy of their demands, citizens' demands, and their right to protest. And that's what he's done so far. If the crackdown continues, though, we'll have to see what he can do.